I remember the first time I truly questioned what life was about. I was sitting by the river near my small apartment, watching the sunlight dance across the water, and yet, for some reason, I felt a strange emptiness inside me. People around me seemed to have it all figured out. They chased promotions, collected achievements, and spoke constantly about happiness as if it were something to be bought or earned. But I knew deep down that something fundamental was missing. Something I couldn't put into words. That day, I asked myself a simple question. What is the real purpose of life? I had read countless books, listened to motivational speeches, and followed every self-help trend that promised meaning and fulfillment. Yet, all of it felt hollow, like chasing shadows. It was as if I was running after an illusion everyone else was happily deceived by, while I was painfully awake to the emptiness behind it all. It wasn't until I stumbled upon Zen teachings that my understanding began to shift. Zen Buddhism doesn't give you answers in flashy slogans or instant gratification. It doesn't tell you to accumulate wealth, impress others, or chase fleeting pleasures. Instead, it asks you to stop, to notice, to observe life without the distractions of your endless desires. I remember reading a line from a Zen master: to know the world, first empty yourself of all that is not you. It sounded paradoxical, almost frustrating, but something in it resonated deeply. I realized that the way most people live is built on a misunderstanding, a misconception that life's meaning lies outside themselves, in things they can gain, control, or consume. We are trained from childhood to believe that happiness comes from external success, good grades, a high-paying job, admiration, or even just the approval of people we barely know. And while those things may provide temporary satisfaction, they never fill the void inside. I saw it in my own life, in the constant restlessness that no promotion, no reward, no achievement could soothe. That realization hit me like a cold wind. I wasn't alone in feeling it. Millions around the world feel it every day, yet few stop to confront it. Instead, we keep running, hoping that the next accomplishment or possession will finally give us the sense of purpose we crave. But Zen teaches something radically different. It suggests that purpose is not something to be sought externally. It is something to be discovered within, something that reveals itself only when we stop forcing, stop grasping, and begin to truly observe the present moment. And so, I began my journey not toward more success, more possessions, or even more knowledge, but toward awareness, toward understanding the subtle rhythms of life that we often ignore, the quiet lessons in silence, the gentle nudges of intuition, the deep truths that hide behind the noise of our modern existence. I started noticing small things, the way a breeze can shift my mood, the way the sun's light feels on my skin, the brief moments of peace that appear when I stop thinking about the future or regretting the past. In that stillness, I discovered a truth that I had never expected. Life's purpose is not hidden in some grand achievement or distant destination. It is not found in fame, fortune, or recognition. It is not even something you can fully describe or teach. It is felt quietly, deeply, when you begin to see life as it is, not as you wish it to be. And that understanding, as simple as it sounds, changed everything for me. This video is my attempt to share that journey, to show you a perspective that most people overlook. A perspective that Zen Buddhism reveals in the subtlest but most profound ways. If you are willing to stop chasing, if you are willing to question the assumptions that everyone around you takes for granted, then perhaps you will see what I saw, that the true purpose of life is not something you find outside yourself. Fit is something you awaken to within. After that moment by the river, I began observing not only my own life, but also the lives of those around me. It became startlingly clear why most people misunderstand life's true meaning. We are conditioned from such an early age to believe that life's value is measured externally. School teaches us to achieve high grades as if they define our worth. Society tells us to pursue lucrative careers as if money alone will bring fulfillment. Even casual conversations are often dominated by achievements, possessions, or plans for the future. It is as though the world itself conspires to convince us that the meaning of life is always out there, somewhere beyond ourselves. I watched friends tirelessly chase promotions and titles, thinking that reaching the next rung on the ladder would finally make them happy. But when they reached that rung, the sense of satisfaction was fleeting. A moment later, the next goal appeared, and the cycle continued endlessly. I saw it in my own life, 2 moments of excitement and pride that vanished as quickly as they came, leaving only an emptiness I could not fill with anything external. The more I pursued these conventional ideas, the more I realized they were illusions. Most people don't even stop to question why they are running this race. Parents, teachers, friends, media, all of them, knowingly or unknowingly, imprint upon us the belief that happiness and purpose lie in what we can acquire, what we can accomplish, or what others think of us. From childhood, we are taught to define ourselves by grades, trophies, and accolades, and later by our careers, relationships, and possessions. Rarely do we pause to consider what it truly means to live a meaningful life. Rarely do we ask, am I seeking this because it brings me genuine fulfillment, or because society told me I should? Even the pursuit of pleasure, which many consider a form of purpose, is often misunderstood. We chase comforts, entertainment, and fleeting joys, thinking they will make us whole. A delicious meal, a new gadget, a vacation to an exotic place, they give brief moments of delight, but these moments fade. Once the novelty wears off, the void remains. I remember feeling this sharply after every little indulgence. There was a lingering sense that something essential was missing, a subtle emptiness that no external pleasure could fill. I began noticing a pattern. The more people rely on external markers of success, happiness, or meaning, the further they drift from understanding life's true purpose. We accumulate experiences and possessions, yet none of them touch the core of our being. It is like trying to quench an unending thirst with cups of water that leak through invisible holes. We are looking for life's meaning outside ourselves, in places where it simply cannot exist. What struck me most profoundly was how deeply fear and attachment feed this misunderstanding. Fear of not having enough, fear of being judged, fear of losing status, fear of emptiness drives people to cling to things that cannot provide real fulfillment. We attach our sense of identity to our jobs, our relationships, our possessions, even to our beliefs and opinions. And when these external anchors shift or disappears, they inevitably do our sense of purpose crumbles. People are terrified to look inward because they fear they might find nothing. I experienced this fear myself. I realized that for so long I had been avoiding the silence inside me, filling it with distractions, endless tasks, and shallow goals. I was terrified of confronting the emptiness because I did not know what I would find there. Most people are the same. We are taught that looking inward is dangerous or unproductive. We are told to act, achieve, consume. Yet Zen Buddhism gently shows us the opposite. That life's meaning is not, and the only way to discover it is to face the silence, to observe without judgment, to let go of the false anchors we have been clinging to for so long. It is a strange paradox. The very things we think will give life meaning are the very things that obscure it. Fame, wealth, pleasure, recognition, they are all distractions, illusions that keep us running endlessly. Most people never realize this because they are too busy running, too distracted to pause and reflect. They misunderstand life because they mistake the shadows on the wall for reality, never noticing that the light that casts the shadow is within themselves. I began to see the truth. Life's purpose is not hidden in what we acquire or achieve. It is not dictated by society, not defined by others, and not something to be grasped or controlled. It is something subtle, quiet, and deeply personal. Something that reveals itself when we stop grasping for illusions and start paying attention to what truly matters, the present moment. The simple act of being, the awareness of life as it unfolds. Understanding this is the first step, and it is this understanding that Zen Buddhism illuminates so clearly. As I began seeking answers, I realized that Zen teachings rarely provide direct explanations. Instead, they speak through stories, parables, and riddles, small windows into a reality that cannot be grasped through logic alone. I remember the first story that struck me deeply, told by an old monk I met during a short retreat in the mountains. He spoke of a young man who came to a Zen master, desperate to understand the meaning of life. The young man asked, "Master, what is the purpose of our existence?" The master simply handed him a bowl of water and told him to carry it across the garden without spilling a single drop. The young man focused intently on the bowl, walking slowly, eyes fixed on the water's surface. Suddenly, the wind blew, a leaf fell, and a small droplet spilled. Frustrated, he dropped the bowl entirely. The master looked at him and said nothing. The young man, confused, asked again, "Master, what does this mean?" "I came to learn the purpose of life, and all you gave me was this task." The master finally spoke softly. Life cannot be learned by chasing answers or grasping at meaning. It is found in the simple, fully present act of being. The purpose is not something to hold, but something to notice. Hearing that story, I felt a strange shift within me. I understood it not as a lesson to memorize, but as an experience to feel. Life, I realized, is like carrying that bowl. We try so hard to control everything: our jobs, our relationships, our desires, thinking that meaning lies in keeping everything perfect. But the moment we loosen our awareness, even slightly, we spill, we lose, we panic. And yet, the Zen path suggests that there is profound wisdom in the very act of noticing, in the focus, in the presence, even if we fail. The purpose reveals itself in the way we engage with life, not in a distant or abstract answer. Another story stayed with me for months. There was a monk named Hakuin, famous in Zen history, who once found a man weeping by the river. The man said, "I have failed in everything. My family is gone. My work is meaningless, and I have no peace." Hakuin didn't offer comfort with words. Instead, he handed the man a cup of tea and invited him to drink. The man did so reluctantly, and Hakuin asked, "What do you taste?" The man shrugged. "Tea," he said. Hakuin smiled. "Exactly. Life is like this cup of tea. It is not the losses or achievements, the grief or the joy that define it. It is simply what is here now. To taste it fully is to live." I tried to grasp this for weeks. I had spent so much of my life trying to assign labels, meanings, and goals to every moment. Yet the Zen perspective was radical. The present moment itself holds all meaning. When I am fully aware of this breath, this sensation, this very instant, I am living the purpose I have been searching for. The tea is life, and life is the tea. Then there was the story of a fisherman in a small village who went to a master, desperate for enlightenment. The master asked him to go fish, but without attaching any thought of success or failure, without wanting a catch, without imagining reward. The fisherman spent the day quietly, casting his net, observing the water, listening to the wind. By evening, he had caught nothing. He complained, "Master, I have done as you said, yet I caught no fish. What is the point?" The master laughed and replied, "You have caught everything. You have caught awareness, attention, life itself. That is the only catch worth having." How many times had I chased results, clinging to achievements, and in the process, ignored the subtle richness of the process itself. Zen asks us to step out of the endless cycle of expectation and disappointment. It teaches that life's purpose is experienced in the mindful participation in each moment, not in the outcome or result. There is a story I hold especially close, about a student who sought enlightenment by traveling across mountains, forests, and rivers. After years of searching, he returned to his teacher and said, "I have seen many wonders, traveled far and wide, yet I do not understand. Enlightenment remains beyond my grasp." The teacher smiled gently and said, "You have traveled far, but you never looked within. The mountains, forests, and rivers you saw were mirrors of your own mind. The path was always inside you." That one struck me with a force I cannot describe. I realized that I had been searching for life's purpose, externally, through experiences, books, mentors, and achievements, when the answers were quietly present inside me the whole time. Zen does not give you life's purpose on a silver platter. It simply points the way. Look within, observe, feel, notice. The external world is only a reflection of the mind's state. As I began meditating on these stories, I noticed subtle changes. In my daily life, simple tasks became profound exercises in presence. Washing dishes, walking through the streets, drinking water, these mundane acts became opportunities to practice awareness. Each moment became a lesson, each breath a teacher. I started to feel the difference between seeking purpose externally and discovering it internally. One is endless, exhausting, and ultimately unfulfilling. The other is quiet, steady, and transformative. These Zen stories, which might seem small or even trivial at first, carry enormous wisdom. They teach that life's purpose is not a distant destination, not a title or possession, not even a feeling of permanent happiness. It is the practice of noticing, of being present, of engaging fully in each moment with attention and awareness. The purpose of life reveals itself not in forceful striving, but in quiet observation, not in accumulation, but in letting go, not in chasing, but in simply being. Through these stories, I began to glimpse a world I had never seen before, world where life is not something to be figured out, conquered, or mastered. It is something to be experienced, moment by moment, breath by breath, cup by cup, step by step. And in that experience, I realized lies the profound truth that most people never discover. That the purpose of life is not something we find outside ourselves. It is something we awaken to within. After reflecting on the stories I had heard, I started to see a pattern emerging, one that transformed the way I understood life itself. The Zen teachings, conveyed through simple parables and experiences, were not just stories for entertainment, they were mirrors, designed to reveal truths that are invisible to the mind obsessed with results, success, or approval. The deeper I thought about it, the clearer it became. Most people misunderstand life because they confuse existence with accomplishment, presence with productivity, and reality with imagination. I realized that the core of Zen wisdom revolves around a single principle: awareness. To be truly alive, to discover life's purpose, we must cultivate the ability to notice, to observe, and to experience each moment without judgment or attachment. It is not enough to read about Zen or to admire it from a distance. One must live it, moment by moment, breath by breath. The stories I had encountered, the bowl of water, the cup of tea, the fisherman casting his net, were all pointing to this fundamental truth. Purpose is not something to grasp. It is something to awaken to. The paradox of life struck me more and more as I meditated on this. We are constantly trying to control everything: our careers, relationships, emotions, even our thoughts, believing that mastery over them will bring meaning. Yet the Zen perspective is radically different. It teaches that the very act of trying to control, of clinging, of forcing meaning, often blinds us to the reality that is already here. The purpose of life is hidden in plain sight, but it is only visible when we let go of our compulsive need to chase it. I began to understand that effort does not equal awareness. Doing does not equal living. Achieving does not equal understanding. I remember one morning during meditation, sitting quietly as the sun slowly rose over the mountains, realizing how often I had missed the beauty of the present by chasing what was next or worrying about what should have been. The wind brushed against my face, carrying the scent of wet earth. The distant crow called out. My own breath rose and fell, steady and rhythmic. And in that ordinary, fleeting moment, I felt a profound clarity. Life's purpose is not something we construct. It is something we uncover by being fully present. Zen also emphasizes impermanence. Everything in life is transient. Joy, sorrow, success, failure, birth, death. This principle can initially feel unsettling, but it is liberating once embraced. If we tie our sense of purpose to anything impermanent, we will inevitably suffer. The cup of tea is warm for a moment, and then it cools. The river flows endlessly. Never the same water twice. The day passes and is gone. Zen teaches us to see purpose not in the fleeting moments themselves, but in the mindful awareness of those moments. To understand impermanence is to release our grasping, our anxiety, our endless striving. It is to accept that life is not a problem to solve, but a mystery to experience. Another subtle yet powerful lesson became clear. Most people misunderstand life because they are looking outward for approval, validation, or external markers of success. We are conditioned to define ourselves by the reflections others see of us, and in that mirror, we forget the one that truly matters, the reflection within. Zen urges us to turn inward, to recognize that the mind, the heart, and the awareness we cultivate are far more profound than anything external. The real purpose of life is to awaken to this inner reality, to live authentically in alignment with it, and to act with clarity, compassion, and insight from that place of awareness. I noticed, too, that Zen wisdom is not abstract, it is intensely practical. Awareness transforms how we live, our relationships, our work, and our daily habits. When we approach life with mindfulness, every action gains depth. A simple conversation becomes an opportunity to truly listen. A meal becomes a practice of gratitude. A walk becomes a meditation on the interconnectedness of all things. Zen teaches that purpose is not in grand gestures, but in the quality of our attention to each moment. When we are fully present, everything we do, however small, reflects life's true meaning. This insight did not come all at once. It unfolded gradually, like sunlight breaking through clouds. At first, it was a faint awareness, a whisper I could barely hear above the noise of my own mind. But with practice, reflection, and patience, it grew into a deep, steady clarity. Life's meaning was not something outside me to chase or acquire. It was a living presence within me, waiting to be recognized in each breath, each sensation, each passing moment. Through Zen, I began to see that most people misunderstand life, not because they are incapable or unwise, but because the culture around them trains them to look in the wrong places. We are told to seek happiness in accumulation, identity in recognition, and purpose in achievement. Yet Zen shows that true understanding comes from stepping back, observing without clinging, and realizing that purpose is not something to hold on to. It is something to awaken to by simply being fully alive. I began to practice this in small ways, noticing the subtle rhythm of my breath, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. I allowed myself to experience life without immediately labeling it as good or bad, successful or failed. And gradually, I began to feel a sense of peace and clarity that I had never known, present all along. And the Zen teachings had simply shown me how to recognize it. The deeper I understood this, it is the act of being fully present, fully awake to the subtle beauty and impermanence of each moment. It is the inner awakening that the Zen stories hint at, the quiet recognition of life as it truly is. And it is only when we cultivate this awareness that the purpose we have been seeking reveals itself, not as a concept, but as a living, breathing experience. Once I began understanding these Zen teachings, I realized that the challenge was not simply knowing them intellectually, but applying them in real life. Life does not slow down for philosophy or parables. It continues with all its demands, distractions, and noise. I had to find ways to bring awareness into the moments I had previously ignored or rushed through. And slowly, I discovered that even the simplest actions could become profound exercises in presence. For instance, I started with my morning routine. Before, I would wake up and immediately reach for my phone, scrolling through messages and news, my mind racing with tasks and worries for the day. I barely noticed the sunlight on my face, the sound of birds outside my window, or even the sensation of my own breath. Once I began practicing Zen mindfulness, I changed this. I would sit quietly for a few moments upon waking, focusing on the rise and fall of my breath, feeling my body awaken naturally. Even the act of drinking water became a meditation. I paid attention to the coolness, the sensation as it moved down my throat, the gratitude I felt for having this simple necessity. These small moments, though seemingly insignificant, slowly transformed my awareness. I also began approaching my work differently. Previously, I treated it as a series of tasks to complete, constantly thinking about results, deadlines, and recognition. This created stress, distraction, and a constant sense of insufficiency. Inspired by Zen, I started to fully immerse myself in each task, however small, without clinging to outcomes. Whether responding to emails or organizing papers, I focused on the present act, allowing myself to notice the sensations, the rhythm, the subtle details I had ignored before. I discovered that this simple shift reduced stress and increased clarity. Work became less about achievement and more about presence. Relationships, too, began to change. I noticed that I often listened to respond, not to truly hear. I was already formulating my thoughts, judgments, or advice while someone spoke, missing the essence of the moment. Practicing Zen awareness, I started to listen fully, without rushing to respond or analyze. I allowed myself to be present with others' words, expressions, and emotions. This deepened connections and brought a sense of peace and empathy that I had never experienced before. Even simple conversations became opportunities to practice presence, understanding, and compassion. Walking outside, I began to notice things I had overlooked for years: the texture of leaves, the sound of distant footsteps, the pattern of clouds drifting across the sky. Each step became a meditation, each movement a chance to engage fully with life. I realize that the present moment is not just a pause between tasks. It is where life itself unfolds. By being aware of it, I was slowly awakening to the subtle richness that I had ignored while chasing external validation. Another practical practice I adopted was embracing impermanence. Zen teaches that everything changes constantly, and by accepting this truth, we can reduce suffering. I started observing thoughts and emotions as temporary visitors rather than fixed realities. Frustration, fear, excitement, and joy would arise and fade, and I learned to witness them without clinging or resisting. This awareness created a sense of freedom I had never known. Life was no longer a relentless chase for permanence, success, or approval. Instead, each moment was precious because it was fleeting, and I began to treasure it fully. I also practiced letting go in subtle ways. When challenges or conflicts arose, instead of immediately reacting, I paused, observed, and allowed the situation to unfold naturally. I discovered that many problems we stress over are amplified by our own attachment and desire to control outcomes. By releasing the need to force or manipulate events, clarity emerged, and solutions often revealed themselves organically. I felt lighter, more grounded, and more connected to life itself. Even ordinary tasks, like cooking, cleaning, or commuting, became opportunities for mindful practice. I noticed the texture of vegetables as I chopped them, the sound of water as I washed dishes, the rhythm of my own steps as I walked. Each act became a way to anchor myself in the present moment, to awaken fully to the life that had always been there, waiting for my attention. Zen taught me that it is not grand rituals or extraordinary events that reveal purpose, but the quality of attention and awareness we bring to ordinary life. Through these small, daily practices, I began to experience the truth that Zen had been pointing toward all along. Life's purpose is not something to chase externally. It is discovered in the depth of our awareness, in our ability to be fully present, to observe without judgment, to embrace impermanence, and to act with compassion. By integrating these practices into everyday life, I began to feel a sense of fulfillment, peace, and clarity that no external achievement had ever provided. The wisdom of Zen is not abstract. It is lived, moment by moment, in the ordinary fabric of life. And through that living, the true purpose of life quietly unfolds.